working to connect a region of over 600 cultural bridges between our lands.
Good evening, I'm Alma Angeles, and you're watching ASEAN in Focus on tonight's headlines. The World Meteorological Organization has warned that global temperatures are set to reach new records in the next 5 years. The WMO said that there's a 98% chance that at least 1 year between 2023 and 2027 will be warmer than the previous record year, 2016. Vietnam has announced plans to phase out coal power by 2050 as part of its commitment to reach net zero carbon emissions by the same year. Myanmar is in the midst of a humanitarian crisis. The country has been hit by a powerful cyclone, and the military junta has continued to commit atrocities against the people. The global tourism recovery continued in the first quarter of 2023 with an estimated 235 million people traveling internationally, or about 80% of pre-pandemic levels. Global temperatures are likely to surge to record levels in the next 5 years. That is according to the World Meteorological Organization today. The UN agency warned that heat-trapping greenhouse gases and the return of the warming El Niño climate system will likely push temperatures more than 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels for at least 1 year between now and 2027, meaning the world will be off track to reach the target set by the Paris Agreement back in 2015.
There's a 66% chance that we would exceed 1.5 degrees during the coming 5 years. We will see the warmest year on record during the coming 5 years once this La Nina phase is over. And these kind of variations, they are a combination of the specific surface temperature variations and the impacts of climate change.
In addition to increasing global temperatures, WMO said human-induced greenhouse gases lead to more ocean heating and acidification, sea ice and glacier melt, sea level rise, and more extreme weather. All this will have far-reaching repercussions for health, food security, water management, and the environment.
The most dramatic changes we expect to happen see in the Arctic, where we have already seen more than double the global warming taking place, and during the coming 5 years the estimation is that the Arctic temperatures would be 3 times the global averages, so we will see more dramatic impacts there. Climate change is proceeding, and once we extract this impact of natural variability caused by this El Niño variability, it's demonstrating that we are again moving in the wrong direction when it comes to increases of temperatures and also when it comes to changes in the global precipitation patterns.
On a more pragmatic and encouraging note, Leon Hermansen, a climate scientist from the UK Met Office, insisted that cutting greenhouse gas emissions will reduce the warming and will reduce these big impacts.
We need to emit as few as possible of the greenhouse gases, and any emissions that we manage to cut will reduce the warming, and this will reduce these big extreme impacts we've been talking about. So, it will be sad the day we pass 1.5, but it's not a reason to give up. We have to continue working out how we can reduce emissions of greenhouse gases as much as possible, even after that.
The WMO's warning comes as world leaders are preparing to meet in Glasgow, Scotland in November for the COP26 Climate Summit. The summit is seen as a critical opportunity for countries to make progress on their commitments to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. A study published Wednesday found that climate change made record-breaking heat waves in Bangladesh, India, Laos, and Thailand at least 30 times more likely. The study, which was conducted by the World Weather Attribution Group, looked at the average maximum temperature and the maximum heat index, which includes humidity. Now, the study found that the heat waves in India and Bangladesh, which previously happened once a century, can now be expected around once every 5 years because of human-caused climate change. For Laos and Thailand, if global temperatures rise by 2 degrees Celsius, such extreme events could happen every 20 years compared to every 2 centuries now. The study also found that the heat waves caused widespread hospitalizations and deaths, with the poor and vulnerable the worst affected. We see again and again that climate change dramatically increases the frequency and intensity of heat waves, one of the deadliest weather events there are, according to Frederick Otto of the Grantham Institute for Climate Change and the Environment, who was involved in this study. Said, still, heat action plans are only being introduced very slowly across the globe, and they need to be an absolute priority adaptation action everywhere, but in particular in places where high humidity enhances the impacts of heat waves. The study's findings are a stark reminder of the urgency of the climate crisis. We must act now to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and avoid the worst impacts of climate change. Vietnam has announced plans to phase out coal power by 2050 as part of its commitment to reach net zero carbon emissions by the same year. The Southeast Asian country is currently the world's third largest pipeline of new coal power projects after India and China. However, it has pledged to cancel all new coal power projects after 2030. The government's new power plan, which was approved by the Prime Minister Pham Minh Chinh on Monday, also outlines a target for 50% of office and residential buildings to use self-produced solar power by 2030. Vietnam ranked in the top 10 globally for solar energy capacity in 2021, but its success has since hit a roadblock. Infrastructure limitations mean transmission lines cannot handle supply spikes, forcing a limit on how much power operators can feed into the grid. Despite these challenges, Vietnam is committed to its transition to clean energy. The government has said it will invest $135 billion in its energy sector over the next decade, with a goal of increasing the share of renewable energy in its energy mix to 20% by 2030. The move by Vietnam is a significant step forward in the fight against climate change. It's a reminder again that even the world's largest coal users are taking action to reduce their reliance on this dirty fuel. The transition to clean energy will not be easy, but it is essential if we are to avoid the worst impacts of climate change. Vietnam's commitment to net zero by 2050 is a major step in the right direction, and it is a sign that other countries are likely to follow suit. Canada has requested international assistance to battle wildfires that have been burning out of control in the western part of the country. The fires have devastated the oil-producing province of Alberta and have also spread to neighboring British Columbia, Saskatchewan, and the Northwest Territories. Thomas I. Likeness for the report.
The call for other countries to help out came from Canada's Public Safety Minister, Bill Blair. Blair is asking the U.S., Mexico, Australia, and New Zealand to send what help they can. The fires began burning in the oil-producing province of Alberta. Since then, they've spread to neighboring British Columbia and Saskatchewan.
There are 91 wildfires in the forest protection area of Alberta. 27 of those are out of control. So far this year, we've responded to 485 wildfires, burning more than 728,000 hectares. Winds have weakened today across most of the province, and temperatures are near normal for this time of year. But things will start to change tomorrow. It will get hotter and drier as we head to the weekend, and as we've seen, that can lead to more active wildfire behavior.
On Wednesday, a smoky haze blocked out the sun in many parts of Alberta. People were told to avoid being outdoors because poor air quality posed a health risk.
This support is critical to those Albertans who are facing immeasurable stress and uncertainty from these wildfires. Unfortunately, the hot and dry weather continues and the conditions for wildfires remain extremely volatile. The fire danger is extreme in the northern part of Alberta, with hot, dry, windy conditions expected to persist in the coming days. Our number one priority is that we fight these fires and we deal with the extreme fire conditions in order to protect human lives. It's important that we are all doing our part to support these efforts. That includes being mindful of the fire risks that are upcoming this long weekend as temperatures are expected to climb again. It will be critical to avoid any activities that might start new fires or make the current situation worse. Smoke also continues to be an issue affecting air quality and visibility right throughout Alberta. A special air quality statement remains in place for most of the province, with many areas still sitting above 10 on the air quality index. Keep in mind that a number of 10 or higher indicates extremely poor air quality.
Forests are tinder dry from high temperatures and a lack of rain. Strong winds are spreading the flames, and lightning strikes could spark even more blazes. As the region gets ready to celebrate a holiday weekend, a weekend that marks the beginning of the summer camping season, plans for outdoor activities will likely be scaled back. There's a ban on campfires, and with smoke-filled air and fires burning near many parks, people will likely opt to stay home. Thomas I. Lightness, Eagle News, Edmonton, Canada. We live in extraordinary times.
A Chinese fishing vessel capsized in the central Indian Ocean with 39 people on board missing. The vessel Lu Pengyuan U-028 was carrying a crew of 17 Chinese, 17 Indonesians, and 5 Filipinos. It was owned by Penglai Jinglu Fishery Company, one of China's major state-run fishing companies. The vessel capsized at about 3 a.m. Beijing time, about 1,000 miles or 1,600 kilometers southeast of Reunion Island. The cause of the accident is not yet known. A multinational search and rescue operation is underway, with China, Australia, Sri Lanka, Indonesia, and the Philippines all involved.
目前已有中国和外籍船只抵达事发海域，搜救工作仍在紧张进行当中，更多救援力量正赶赴现场，我们将继续会同各方采取一切措施，尽一切可能搜救失踪人员。中方感谢澳大利亚海上搜救部门及时派飞机和协调途经外籍船只参与搜救。希望事发海域周边国家继续会同中方开展联合搜救，不放弃拯救生命的希望。
President Xi Jinping has ordered a thorough investigation into the accident. He has also called for an increase in safety measures for Chinese fishing vessels. The vessel left Cape Town on May 5 en route to Busan, according to the Marine Trafficking website, which last located the vessel on May 10 to the southeast of Reunion, a tiny French island in the Indian Ocean. The United Nations General Assembly is holding a high-level meeting on May 18 to the 19th to review the progress made on the Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction 2015 to 2030. The Special Representative of the Secretary General for Disaster Risk Reduction, Mami Mizutori, said that while there has been some progress in reducing mortality from disasters, the number of people affected by disasters has increased by 80% since 2005.
Mortality went down somewhat because early warning system is much better than before. But if we include the numbers of mortality from COVID, that also went up. And if you look at all other things, affected people, injured people, economic loss, disruption to infrastructure basic service, this is all going up, as you know. And the number of people affected by disasters, it has gone up 80% since 2005 to now. We need to have a better risk governance. Many times in most countries, disaster risk management is confined in a very small agency in the government without budget, without people. But if we don't have risk-informed policies across all the sectors, agriculture, industry, education, you are vulnerable to disasters. So now is the time really to start to work on the root causes of disasters, the root causes of risk, which include poverty. It's not only about climate emergency. We do need to work on the vulnerabilities and exposure in our societies. And if we do this, and if we make the right decisions, I think we have a better chance of preventing.
Myanmar is in the midst of a humanitarian crisis. The country has been hit by a powerful cyclone, and the military junta has continued to commit atrocities against the people. The Special Rapporteur on the situation of human rights in Myanmar, Tom Andrews, said that the cyclone has had a horrible effect on extremely poor and destabilized parts of Myanmar. Let's listen in.
MOCA was among the most powerful cyclone to make landfall in this part of Myanmar. And what we're seeing right now is misery on top of misery. It has had a horrible effect on extremely poor and destabilized parts of Myanmar who have suffered so from horrific violence. And I'm talking about decades of systematic discrimination, genocidal attacks, and displacement.
Andrews also gave more details about an attack on a village gathering organized by the military's opponents in Sagaing region on April 11.
This village attack, we know, killed at least 160 people. According to the National Unity Government, nearly 40 of those who were killed were children. Only 59 people's remains were identifiable, with one rescue worker stating that victims' remains, and I quote, had to be picked up part by part and buried. This is yet another example of the junta's brutality and the probable crimes against humanity and war crimes being inflicted on the people of Myanmar. The Myanmar junta is using internationally supplied arms and associated materials to commit atrocities against the people of Myanmar. The Russian Federation supplied the Yak-130 aircraft and the Mi-35 helicopters and the ammunition that were provided, that were involved in this attack. These weapons and materials were provided directly to the Directorate of Defense Industries. Since this military coup occurred, led by Senior General Min Aung Hlaing, and that's 2 years ago, a little over 2 years ago, at least 3,500 civilians have been killed. At least 22,000 political prisoners have been detained. And at least 1.5 million people have been forcibly displaced.
Andrews concluded by calling on member states to deny the junta the 3 critical ingredients for conducting these operations.
Since that coup on the 1st of February, I have continued to remind member states that we can address this crisis by denying the junta the 3 critical ingredients for it conducting these operations. 1, financial support; 2, weapons; and 3, legitimacy.
Thai opposition parties met to discuss forming a government after winning the recent elections. The Progressive Move Forward Party won the most seats in the lower house, but it will need to form a coalition with other parties to secure a majority in the Senate. MFP claimed 152 seats, with rival opposition outfit Pheu Thai second on 141. They are working on a 6-party coalition that would give them more than 300 of the 500 lower house seats. But to secure the Prime Minister's job, the coalition needs a majority across both houses, including the Senate, whose 250 members were handpicked by the previous junta. Military-linked parties could, in theory, try to form a minority government, relying on Senate support to get their choice of Prime Minister through, but with few lower house seats, it would find it difficult to govern. Some senators have already said they will not support MFP leader Pita Limjornrat, who has proposed amending the country's lei majeste laws. The outcome of the coalition talks is uncertain, but the election results suggest that Thai voters are ready for a change. The global tourism recovery continued in the first quarter of 2023, with an estimated 235 million people traveling internationally, or about 80% of pre-pandemic levels. The United Nations World Tourism Organization, or UNWTO, said the results are in line with its projections for international arrivals to recover 80% to 90% of pre-pandemic levels in 2023. The Middle East was the only region that surpassed its pre-pandemic international tourist arrivals, growing by 15% in the first quarter of the year versus the same period in 2019. This was followed by Europe, which recovered 90% of pre-pandemic levels, Africa 88%, and the Americas at 85%. Asia and the Pacific accelerated its recovery with 54% of pre-pandemic levels, but this upward trend is set to accelerate now that most destinations, particularly China, have reopened according to the UNWTO. UNWTO Secretary General Zura Polikashvili said the start of the year has shown again tourism's unique ability to bounce back. However, we must remain, he said, alert to challenges ranging from geopolitical insecurity, staffing shortages, and the potential impact of the cost of living crisis on tourism. And we must ensure tourism's return delivers on its responsibilities as a solution to the climate emergency and as a driver of inclusive development. The Philippines is also seeing a strong recovery in tourism, with international visitor arrivals reaching 2 million from January 1 to May 12, representing 42% of the 2023 target. As my usual habit, I'd like to end the day on a positive note. Let's encourage and build each other up so that no one is left behind. And that's it for tonight's broadcast of ASEAN in Focus. I'm Alma Angeles. Stay in the news because we live in extraordinary times. Good night.